Hola, hola a todos, ¿cómo están? Estamos listos para empezar con el streaming. Vamos a ver, estamos a punto, como dice ahí, ya, esperando. Estamos listos, estamos activos. Lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a traducir la entrevista de ADAM Aron con Trey. Por favor, ayúdenme compartiendo este video. Como pueden ver, tengo un fondo verde para tratar de no distraer mucho. Eso vamos a ver. Más o menos por ahí. Aceptable. Ok, vamos entonces. Vamos, Trey, estamos esperando por ti. Chicos, por favor, compartan para que esta transmisión sea exitosa. Necesitamos que compartan, chicos, por favor. Muy importante. Sobre todo en estos días que tenemos que compartir el mensaje para todo el mundo. Estamos esperando. En cualquier minuto empieza la entrevista. Ok, ya tenemos a Trey, estamos casi listos. Esperando, ansiosos para saber qué es lo que va a decir Adam Aron. Listo, empezamos, chicos. Empezamos.
Meeting with you and to be with the people who follow you so closely.
I appreciate that immensely. So we're not going to waste too much of your time. We're just going to dig right into these questions. So we're going to throw you some hardballs here right off the bat. I want to talk about the 8.5 million shares that were sold to Mudrick. So there's some speculation coming from the ape community, the retail investors out there, that the sale that took place with Mudrick was, it's a little bit shady, not in terms of what AMC did, but how they sold it and the way they got out of the stock. So they sold it immediately the next week on Monday, and then followed that up with a statement with, being AMC is overvalued. Do you have anything to speak on about that? Because there's just a little bit of fear, uncertainty, and doubt in terms of the way that whole transaction took place.
So, acaba de preguntarle sobre la transacción, la venta y compra que se hizo el lunes
de the way you phrase the question, Trey, is the way some of the people in your community, our community, are talking, but it's not actually accurate. So, and there are some nuances here. So the first thing is that Mudrick Capital has been incredibly helpful to AMC. I want to remind you that back in December, when no one would give AMC a dime, Mudrick Capital took a big risk and lent us $100 million, $100 million. And that was the catalyst for our continued capital raising between mid-December and late January that brought in $1.2 billion. And I don't think we would have raised the $1.2 billion if Mudrick hadn't given us the first $100 million. And I don't know that AMC would have been able to avoid bankruptcy court had we not raised that $1.2 billion back then. So let's start at the beginning that Mudrick's been a very good actor here, a very good actor. Second, I don't know exactly what they own today, but I know that they have, I believe, I don't know for sure, but I believe they have a couple of $100 million of AMC debt. And they've held this debt for quite some time. Mudrick as a firm has every incentive for AMC to thrive and prosper.
So, básicamente está diciendo que el apoyo de Mudrick ha sido across the time, hace mucho tiempo que ha venido ayudando cuando nadie más estaba ahí.
And I can confirm that we did it at a price of $27.12 a share, and that it brought in $239 million in cash what they did with their shares is their business, not our business. We sold shares to them in good faith. They can do what any shareholder can do. They can hold them, they can sell them. That's their decision, not ours. So I can't confirm exactly what they did. I can't confirm the timing of what they did. I do know that some of the estimates out there about how much money they might have made in the buying shares.
Ok, so básicamente lo que está diciendo es que Mundrick ha apoyado a AMC desde hace ya tiempo, incluso desde febrero, y está hablando, bueno, de que no sé, él no se puede hacer responsable cuando ellos compran y cuando venden, pero sí está diciendo que ha apoyado a AMC cuando nadie más ha estado allí.
But you'll never find a statement that Mudrick made to that effect on the record. Having said that, look at what they did. They gave us $239 million of cash at what was then a sky-high price for the shares, $27.12 a share. Now, we all know that since that occurred, the share price is higher still. And so I would take that all of that. What Mudrick did, it was all very good for AMC as a company. It was very good for AMC shareholders. Next question.
All right. I like the piece of that you said there wasn't any hard proof stating that they actually made that statement. So I think that's a good thing to get out there.
So, básicamente lo que dijo es que ellos pueden vender cuando quieran, han apoyado a AMC y lo que hicieron fue beneficioso para AMC como compañía.
This has just raised some concerns for a lot of the investors. Now, there was the first interview here.
Ahora vienen las preguntas. Ahora viene el por qué está vendiendo y qué es lo que va a pasar.
1,000 shares total remaining after they'd issued those 43 million shares, offering into the market and raise a great sum of cash. So there's a sentiment right now passing along with the retail investor group, the apes, that they feel a little bit betrayed. They feel like the management was hiding something that was behind closed doors, and we just didn't get to see it. Now, there's probably some sort of explanation for this, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. But where did these shares come from for this 11.5 million shares that you sold into the market for Mudrick Capital for those 8.5 million shares? And are there any shares remaining that we should expect for the futures?
Beautiful. Ahora le está diciendo lo que sentimos nosotros cuando él vendió los shares, que nos sentimos traicionados, y está preguntando qué va a pasar en el futuro.
That's one of the reasons I came on with you today, is to make sure that we get the straight scoop out in front of all of the people who are shareholders of our company. Back when we said that we had 43 million shares available for sale, you will also recall that was before the May 4 shareholder meeting that was postponed. One of the items that was up for shareholder vote at the May 4 meeting was to put 20 million AMC shares into what's called the Management Equity Incentive Plan. Those shares would be essentially given to the management of the company. Given, I might add, for free to the management of the company.
Right.
The management team of the company cares so much about the company that we decided that rather than us taking those 20 million shares and those 20 million shares working for the benefit of officers of AMC, that we ought to use those shares a different way. We ought to use those shares to strengthen the company, the company that all of your followers are invested in. And so if you look at a press release that we put out just about an hour ago with the new proxy for the new July 29 shareholder meeting, you will see that there are 0 shares being allocated to the management of the company. Those 20 million shares that were going to go into my pocket and the pockets of other managers and executives of the company, we decided instead that they should be used for the company's benefit, not for our personal benefit. So though, if you look at the proxy that went out a few minutes ago, we are not making any request of the shareholders to put any shares in the Management Equity Incentive Plan. That essentially, those 20 million shares that were going to go to us personally for our own money, that freed those 20 million shares up, and we sold those 20 million shares, 8.5 million earlier over the last week to Mudrick, and 11.5 million today. And between those two transactions, We raised over $800 million of cash, not to line my pocket or anybody who works at AMC, but to put that money in the treasury of AMC, to strengthen AMC, let AMC do more good things, to grow our company. That's where the 20 million shares came from. We all know what we did with them. We put them into the market. We brought in over $800 million doing so. And that makes AMC a much stronger company, much easier for us to grow going forward. And I think that's in the best interest of our shareholders. There's another point I'd like to make. And it's a very important point because it goes to this whole issue of dilution. I believe amongst some AMC shareholders, there is a fear, you use the phrase FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Right.
There's a fear that just the mere fact of issuing shares is a bad thing for a company. There's another very strongly held view, and it's the view that I hold and that many other AMC shareholders have, including many of your aides.
Voy a esperar que termine la idea para explicar.
Let's look at the facts. Back in December and January, the press was absolutely convinced that AMC was going to fail. We issued 250 million shares and sold them into the market. And we brought in, as you know, from that effort, about $800 million cash. That also triggered us being able to borrow another $400 million of cash. That made AMC so much stronger. That single act of diluting shares saved the company and made the company a stronger company. The share price when that was done was between $3 and $7 a share. Now let's fast forward. We put out some more shares that we announced on May 13th. And we announced with a sale of 43 million shares, which we raised at an average price of which we sold at an average price of $9.98, that we brought in $428 million to AMC.
Okay, so
in our view, yes, we were aware we were diluting the share count, but in our view, that $428 million of cash greatly strengthened AMC and made AMC a much stronger company. And I don't need to ask you what happened to our share price between May 13 and now. But what I do know is when we raised $428 million at $9.90, I think it's $9.94 a share actually, at $9.94 a share, we strengthened AMC. Now, sure enough, we announced on Tuesday we brought in another $239 million, and we announced today that we brought in another $587 million. Look when we did this. We did this when the trading volumes of AMC stock were sky high. In normal weeks, AMC trades about $500 million shares in a week. If we just look at what we did this week, I would say that 8.5 million shares or 11 million shares in a week when we're trading 500 million shares normally. It's just hard to see how that should be alarming. It's such a small amount of shares compared to what's trading.
Right.
But that's against a normal week. The trading has not been normal of late. We've been trading 500 million shares as a company a day last week and this week.
Right.
So 8 million shares or 11 million shares, these are very small numbers in comparison to what's actually trading. And it's our view that that we're strengthening the company and we're not hurting the company. Now, you asked me a question, how many shares do we have left? And we made a public comment to that point this afternoon in press release. We're done. We're out. There's no more left.
Okay.
Now, when I say there's no more left, I want to be technical. There are 46,000 shares left. 46,000. Remember, this is a company that's issued over 400 million shares over the last year. So if
Eso es una
anybody
noticia
wants
buena.
to take comfort in the fact that there are no more shares coming, unless the shareholders approve us doing something else, they can take comfort in that. I would actually tell you, if I were a shareholder, I would be more concerned that we don't have shares available to us, because I think shares are a very powerful tool to do good things for a company.
Ok, so básicamente lo que pasa es que estoy explicando que los 20 millones en total de shares que se vendieron, que fue a principios del lunes y ahora, a los 8 millones y tanto y 11 millones y tanto, hacen 20 millones, fueron a los bolsillos de la compañía para poder mejorar la compañía. So básicamente la compañía está en mejor posición ahora mismo y está diciendo que después de toda la venta de shares ya no quedan más shares disponibles, quedan 46.000 shares solamente, que no es nada. So básicamente todas las shares están en el mercado, so no se puede hacer más venta del lado de ellos. So no hay más dilución que se pueda hacer.
2012.
Qué bueno.
It took us 9 years to use those shares. I want to make sure I don't steamroll you, and I want to make sure you ask me more questions.
No worries.
All the questions you have, but I want to make sure everybody knows that we can't do any more shares unless the shareholders approve. And that's just it. I mean, those are straight facts. And I'm going to make the case probably later in this call in response to one of your questions that the shareholders should authorize more shares, because this could be a very valuable tool to build this company going forward and grow this company going forward.
No,
But
bueno,
let's save that for the next question.
All right, before we move on to the next question, I just want to circle back to one clarification point, because I thought it was pretty
Tengo
interesting.
algo que decir de
It
eso.
was the
Vamos a ver.
piece where you were saying that the equity incentive plan, right, for the management. So those 20 million shares, whether or not you decided to sell them, into the market for the company or to give them to the management, either way, those 20 million shares would have been, essentially added to the overall shares outstanding.
That's correct.
All right, that's good to know.
But instead, they're not going to the 100 people in the company who normally get those shares. They were used this week for the benefit of all of our shareholders.
All right, got it.
We raised a lot of money that we just put in the bank.
Perfect. I think that's obviously a great way to use those shares.
Lo que no me gustó fue que básicamente dice que si los shareholders dicen que se podrían producir más shares, que sería bueno para la compañía. No, cada vez que puedan van a sacar más dinero. Eso no me parece muy interesante. Pero al menos no hay más shares disponibles hasta ahora. So, eso es espectacular.
You're requesting a 25 million share authorization for, I'm assuming, would be 2022. So I guess the big clarification points that I have is, if this is approved, will a single one of these shares be used in 2021? And what sort of plans would you have for these 25 million shares, so that we would want to vote yes on this authorization?
Well, let's start with they absolutely cannot be used in calendar year 2021. That's just, again, we wrote that into the plan. So no one even has to take my word for it. It's not even possible.
Right.
Second, you said that we would use those shares in 2022. What we would say is we wouldn't use those shares before 2022, but that doesn't mean we will use all those shares in 2022. We could, but that doesn't mean we will. The last time the shareholders authorized shares for this company was 9 years ago. It took us 9 years to use up all those shares. And looking ahead, if the shareholders approve this new 25 million share tranche, theoretically we could use them quickly in 2022, or we could use them spread out over a long period of time. We would only use them if there are really good opportunities for AMC. So let's talk about what some of those opportunities might be. God forbid this COVID virus comes back and puts us all on our keisters. I want to say, I don't mean AMC, I mean like the country and the world.
Yeah, tracking.
If disaster comes back, we'll all be glad that we had this authorization sitting out there to be used. Hopefully that's not the case. So why don't we kind of take that one off the table, because it sounds such bad karma to think COVID-19 would come back, or there'd be the invention of COVID-20, or God only knows what. But let's look at some of the other good things we could do, not just have it as rainy day money to prevent a catastrophe. We could use this cash that we might raise in 2022 and beyond. We might use some of the cash we already raised this week to pay down some of our expensive debt and to deleverage the company. That would be very good for AMC. It would especially be good if we could buy some of that debt back at a discount and actually make a profit in buying back some of the debt. That's an example. Here's another example. We owe landlords over $400 million in cash from rent that we incurred in 2020 that they very graciously said, don't pay us now, pay us later. But we owe that money. Well, what if we can go to some of those landlords and say, yeah, we're supposed to pay you back over 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. But if you'd let us pay you less, we'll pay you now because we've got cash. Well, again, we owe them this money. These are binding legal contracts. So if we can use shares to generate cash to take future obligations and pay them off at a discount, that would be a wonderful thing for AMC as a company and for our shareholders. There are more, and there are many more. And when you see the proxy that's coming out, this time we actually printed in the proxy some of the things that we might be able to use shares for. But I'll give you another one, and we were quite explicit about this in the press release we put out the other day. We believe that there's merger and acquisition opportunity for AMC. Well, AMC is clearly making it through this pandemic. Others of our competitors did not. There are movie theater circuits out there that did go into bankruptcy. There are movie theater circuits that are faltering, that are failing. There are theaters that are otherwise very powerful theaters that gross a lot of money in normal times that are now up for grabs. And we specifically mentioned theaters that were leased or owned by ArcLight and Pacific Theaters in mostly in Southern California and a little bit around the country. Those theaters are now all closed. Landlords are looking for new tenants for those theaters. We're going to chase those theaters hard. Some of them, one of them that I can think of, was the third most visited movie theater in all of Los Angeles in the years 2017 and 2018. Wouldn't that be a great theater to add to AMC as just an example? So we can also use the $800 million we just raised and whatever we might be able to raise in 2022 and 2023 or beyond. Maybe there's another movie theater company we can buy. Maybe there's a great acquisition opportunity for us outside of pure play movie theaters that would allow us to vertically integrate and create real value for AMC shareholders. If you arm us with the tool, meaning stock is a tool, if you arm us with the tool to go find value creating opportunities for AMC shareholders, we can do that. If we're not armed with this tool, then you're tying our hands behind our back and you'll make it just that much harder for us to land some of these attractive opportunities that benefit us all. Now, we also know from the May 4 meeting that there was a lot of concern being expressed by our shareholders about the size of the equity ask. Remember, we asked for 500 million shares.
Right.
And the timing. There was no discussion as to timing. And some out there thought, oh my goodness, they're going to put 500 million shares into the market tomorrow, which scared a few people. And we were trying to say, no. The last time the company authorized 100 million shares, it lasted for almost a decade. So we scrapped that meeting specifically because we, our management team, we were listening to our shareholders. And we were changing our plans so as to mesh our thinking with the thinking of our company's owners, which is our shareholder base. And so this time around, May 4 was only a few weeks ago, right?
Yeah,
we went out in writing and said, can't do anything with these shares now because we can't use them in 2021. That's actually a commitment I made to you on the first of our interviews.
I remember.
With respect to all 500 million shares. And the second major change is instead of asking for authority from the shareholders to issue 500 million shares, we ask for authority to issue 25 million shares. That quantity, straight arithmetic, it's 95% less shares. It's a much more measured request.
Básicamente lo que ha estado diciendo es que con el dinero que tiene ahora puede pagarle a la gente que le debe los arriendos, porque al parecer le deben muchísimo dinero en arriendo, de que pone a la AMC en una posición mucho mejor que otros del mismo ambiente que hayan cerrado, han ido a bancarrota, y AMC puede comprar este tipo de compañías. Eso está diciendo cómo este dinero puede ayudar a la compañía.
Not going to use a single one of these, legally binding. It's in the document, so you couldn't argue it even if you wanted to. You might not even use these shares in 2022. It would be mainly for, different opportunities to raise capital and to improve the company. You stated, the possibility of a merger or an acquisition with different movie theater chains. And I suppose I'd like you to expand a little bit on maybe some that you're able to, talk about, some of the opportunities that are presenting themselves to you, because this has been a conversation that the apes have had, more than once about the potential of, AMC either A, being acquired, or B, acquiring other companies to improve the strength of them and scare away short positions from the stock in the short term and the long term. Is there anything that you're able to speak on for that?
Sure. So think of it this way. The stronger AMC is as a company, the more people who bet against the company should be concerned. I'm disconnecting that from our share price. I'm not saying the share price on January 15 or February 15 or March 15 and that from our share price. Just in general, not talking about trading activity, just in general. The stronger a company is, kind of by definition, the stronger a company is. And we've raised billions of dollars over the past 10 months. And we have almost $2 billion of cash in the bank now. Almost $2 billion of cash.
How does that compare to your liabilities?
A separate question. I'll answer in a second.
Okay, no worries.
Next, I promise. The question is, what do we do with that cash? How do we deploy it so as to make AMC even stronger still? And I do believe that there's M&A possibility for AMC. M&A being, of course, merger and acquisition. We already said publicly there are 17 ArcLight and Pacific theaters that will not reopen. Some of them are some of the strongest theaters in the United States, highest grossing theaters in the United States. Would love to get some of those. I will tell you that because AMC is strong again, we've had various theater landlords around the country approach us about taking over other attractive theaters, not ArcLight Pacific theaters, but other theaters operated by other chains whose financial strength or the ingenuity of their management team is not as well respected by those landlords as they now respect AMC. And so I think there's an opportunity to pick up some highly attractive theaters there. There are other entire movie theater companies who have posited to us that they would like us to buy them outright. And the answer to all these things is always the same answer. Number one, do we have the resources to consummate such moves? And number two, is it smart for us to consummate those moves? And if we can buy things at a very attractive price, or we can lease some theaters on attractive lease terms, then it's smart to proceed. And if somebody wants us to pay an arm and a leg or overpay or do something foolish, we're not going to do that.
Right.
Remember this. I am an AMC shareholder. I've run AMC now for 5.5 years. Other than when I gifted some shares to my 2 adult sons, I have not sold one AMC share in 5.5 years.
Okay.
And I have no current intentions to sell AMC shares at the moment. I'm a believer. I believe that we can grow our company, strengthen our company, build our company. And that's what our entire management team is focused on. And again, disconnecting this from the share price of the moment. Over the long term, my job is to build a stronger AMC, and that's what I'm committed to doing.
Perfect. You said you kind of circled back to this, so I think this would be a good point to touch back on, is just the liabilities versus current cash on hand. How is that situation looking after you've raised so much capital?
So we have in the neighborhood of just under $6 billion of debt. It's 5 point something. Those people who like to badmouth AMC, familiar with them,
right? Absolutely.
Are arguing about them for months now.
Absolutely.
They pointed that as if it was the end of the universe. Well, they're kind of forgetting to mention that we have $2 billion of cash.
Okay,
so right off the bat, that lowers what we call the net debt to closer to $4 billion from $6 billion. And we have very few maturities. Maturities means when you have to pay debt back.
Right.
Until the years 25 and 26. We have a little bit of money that we owe in 23, a little bit of money that we owe in 24. But most of the money that we have to repay is 2025 and 2026. That gives us 4 or 5 years to earn money. To pay some of that debt down. That's a long time. That's a lot of earning power for AMC to pay down debt. Additionally, companies carry a reasonable amount of debt all the time. So the other thing that we can do is refinance debt. It's not really like someone is going to walk up with an empty wheelbarrow in 2026 and say, here, pay me back. What is more likely is that well before 2026, we'll work with our investment banks, we'll work with our commercial banks.
Bueno, para los que les interesa saber qué va a pasar con el tema de los shares, básicamente, para que ya sepan de una vez, ya dijeron que él ya vendió todos los shares que tenía disponibles, lo único que les quedan son 46,000 shares, que no es nada, así que no pueden seguir vendiendo shares en el mercado, no va a haber más dilución y de aquí ya no debería haber más efecto de ellos metiendo shares en el mercado, diluyendo el stock, que es lo que queríamos escuchar. Y lo tenemos. Si quieren seguir quedando para el resto, vamos. Pero ahora está hablando de la deuda de la compañía y cosas así.
And in that recent press release that came out, it was found there was about 501 million total shares. Now it's also been found that only U.S. and Canada primarily makes up that overall share count. So there's some speculation as to how many of the actual retail investors could have been left out of that overall count. For example, we as the ape community have taken tallies of all the people who own stock all over the world.
So ahora él quiere hablar sobre los shares que están available y todos los que tienen shares disponibles. Entonces está hablando de qué pasa con la gente que tiene shares fuera de los Estados Unidos y Canadá, que no están siendo contados en el conteo de shares.
That statement, or that you just like clarification points on.
Sure. And just for the record, I'm happy to answer the question. I'm going to answer it as robustly as I know how. Some of the things that you said in there were not correct. And in my answer, I'll correct the record.
Feel free.
So we announced today, well, before I say we announced today, we fulfilled a commitment. We've told people publicly that we were going to announce a share count as of June 2. Well, today's June 3, and we put out the share count as of June 2. That was yesterday. It's actually 501, I think, 0.8 million. So it's a little bit more than 501.
Gotcha. Yeah, my bad.
Between 501 and 502. Let's start there.
All right.
The international share count is included in that number of 501 point whatever it was, 7 or 8, whatever it was, between 501 and 502. Our understanding is the international shares, meaning of the 501 million shares, about 27 million of those were held outside the United States. And it's like more than dozens and dozens of countries. It's all around the world.
Right.
You've got people who are subscribing to your YouTube channel from a lot of countries internationally. Right. And we got shareholders all around the world too. So the share count is, sorry, I think I said that wrong. I think it's 27 million shares are outside of the U.S. and Canada, because there are also a number of Canadian shares that are included in the 501. But that 501 number does include all the shares that are outstanding worldwide, and again, I think it's my understanding that the Canadians can easily vote in our normal annual meetings.
So, básicamente lo que está diciendo es que, confirmando que deberían ser 501 millón de shares disponibles en total, y de esos 28 millones son los que están afuera de Estados Unidos y Canadá. Y está diciendo también de que Canadá también puede tener participación en el voto cuando se vote el próximo mes para tomar decisiones de la compañía.
There's been a tremendous amount of speculation amongst your followers, amongst my shareholders, and in most cases they're the same people. That there must be something more than that, because they see these enormous volumes of stock that are trading every day, and they're saying, if you only have 500 million shares, like, how can you trade 700 million shares in a day? Well, there are multiple answers to that question. One is,
okay, so ahora va a hablar de la gente que piensa que hay fake shares o naked shares. So va a hablar ahora de eso, que es pura especulación. Va a decir ahora qué es lo que piensa de eso.
5, 10, 20 years.
Right.
And one of the practices that is developed is what's called machine trading.
Yeah.
Where humans are not trading stock, but machines are trading stock in enormous quantities algorithmically. And what they're doing is they're taking a share, and in something called high frequency trading, they're trading it, and then trading it again, and trading it again, and trading it again, and over and over and over. So an individual share
muy rápida
might go back and forth between these machines and between the machines and humans, zillions of times in a day. So that explains part of it. The other part, and it's so big we almost can't quantify it. As you know, the options market has been very active about AMC, especially over the last 6 months. Puts and calls, which can create what are called derivatives.
Buried to delivers.
Where people are, taking puts and calls and have various strategies.
Right.
Well, what this does, a typical option contract is for 100 shares. One contract, 100 shares. And, if to buy 100 shares, you might have to put down, whatever it is, 100 times our closing price, $5,000. But you might be able to buy or sell an option contract for $2 or $5 or $50 or $80. And so what that does is allows people to create the economic benefits as if they own the stock without actually owning the stock, or selling it, or vice versa, selling the stock. So it greatly increases the volatility of the stock because so much less cash has to be put up.
Okay, so está explicando.
And when I talk about this, yesterday in the United States of America, AMC shares represented 11% of all the options on all the public companies that exist in the United States yesterday. One company, 11% of all the options trading yesterday was in AMC shares.
Wow. So,
that's why you see such high
ahora está diciendo de qué pasa con todo esto de los fake shares y todo eso que la gente está pensando. Y lo que hizo es que se lo atribuyó a las máquinas que hacen este trading de alta velocidad, a los options también, que tiene 11% de las opciones en el mercado fueron de AMC ayer. Entonces está diciendo que todo eso influye que la gente empiece a pensar o debe haber fake shares, pero él está explicando que no necesariamente, y lo está atribuyendo a las opciones, a los contratos, y lo está atribuyendo a las máquinas que hacen trading de alta velocidad.
And they were breathlessly reporting this as if they knew this to be true. Well, guess what? I can tell you that I've never given any serious thought to splitting our stock or a reverse split of our stock. That's point number one. Point number two.
Good. So dice que, acaba de decir que está confirmando que es un mito, que él no va a hacer split del stock, porque eso es lo que estaban diciendo, y no va a hacer reverse split ni nada de eso. Eso es muy bueno.
Or do a reverse split of our stock without shareholder approval.
Okay.
So, if we wanted to do that,
lo que está diciendo es que ellos no quieren hacerlo, ese reverse split o ese split, pero eso va a ser decisión de los shareholders, que somos nosotros. Por eso era tan importante que nosotros tuviéramos esos shares. So, el próximo mes, cuando sea la votación, nosotros podemos decidir qué es lo que queremos hacer con la compañía, con los stocks.
I think my management team and I are pretty smart people. I think we've kept AMC away from a lot of trauma over the last year. I think we've strengthened our company a lot. But you've probably figured out by now, if you look at what I'm saying publicly, if you look at my tweets, if you look at the Diane Fossey contribution, I have an enormous amount of respect for the owners of our business. I work for you. You are the bosses here, not me. I keep on seeing all this stuff on Twitter about king this and king that. You know, well, it's funny and it's flattering, and it's more funny than flattering. But you know what? You know who the real king is? The shareholder is king. You are fully in charge. That's why we're not asking you to authorize 500 million shares. We're authorizing you to vote for 25 million shares, because we don't think you'd vote to approve 500 million shares. We think you might vote to approve 25 million shares. That's why we take what you think, we take what you have to say very carefully, and we give a lot of thought to what you guys think. And it's for a simple reason.
El stock ahora mismo está en 51.
In the capitalistic free market system. I went to what some people think is the best business school in the world. I hate to say that I went there over 40 years ago, but it's a long time ago.
Sure.
So, lo que vamos a hacer es que vamos a poner el stock también para poder ver, comparar cómo va el stock con la respuesta que le está dando.
At the Harvard Business School, professional management teams work for the owners of the business. Now, of course, we've got a responsibility to all stakeholders. So I've got to pay attention not just to shareholders, but primarily our fiduciary duty is to shareholders. And guess what? You, Trey, you're a shareholder. The people who are watching your YouTube channel right now, I'm guessing 90%, 95%, 99% of those people are AMC shareholders. We care what you think. We respect who you are. And honestly, it's a privilege for me to lead this company that you now own.
You know, I think it's very apparent too, and you know, the whole stock split thing. You know, right off the bat, there's only one way that you would actually know about this stock split. You know, and that's if you were watching and combing through the comments and concerns of the apes, the retail investors out there who you work for. Which is, I think it shows how much you're really digging into the sentiment and the current climate of the retail investors. So I'm glad that you made that statement. That's a good thing to kind of end that question on. Now, I think there's just a last couple.
Can I just a quick comment?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Like, I'm living on Twitter right now. Reddit also, but more Twitter. And
Vamos a poner.
When many of you know some parts of my background. You know, a decade ago, I was the CEO of the Philadelphia 76ers. I used to tweet like 10 to 15 times a day with a fan base in Philadelphia. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. I learned a lot by reading what the fans wrote back to me. I used to get 200-300 inbound tweets a day when I was running the Sixers. Well, that was a long time ago, but I still had 21,000 Twitter followers in April. Mostly a remnant of those days. I've been pretty dormant on Twitter since I left. I mean, I'm still an owner of the Sixers, small, very small, but since I left the day-to-day operational role. Literally today, Trey, I crossed 100,000 Twitter followers. We went from 21,000 in April to 100,000
Congratulations.
in June. And yeah, that's nothing compared to you. You're like way ahead of me. So, and I'm tweeting almost daily now. But more important than the tweets that I write, although they're important because they're routinely being read by anywhere from 200,000 to 2 million people each time I put out a tweet. what's really more important than that is I'm reading the inbound messages that are coming to my feed, because it allows me to have my finger on the pulse of what you all are thinking. And very quietly, I haven't made a lot of noise about this, but in the last 4 weeks, I've followed about 1,000 apes. 1,000.
Apes.
And
funny.
Nobody's doing this for me. I don't have somebody like running my Twitter feed. This is what I'm doing at 10 o'clock at night when I'm sat or watch TV.
Ok, se está diciendo lo mucho que se mete en Twitter. Vamos a ver, esto empezó ya hace unas 40 minutos más o menos. Vamos a ver cómo ha trabajado el stock.
Followers. I'm following some people with 10,000 followers. I'm following people with 1,000 followers. I'm following people with 100 followers. I'm following people with 2 followers.
Como hace una hora más o menos. Y desde que él empezó a hablar, el stock ha empezado a subir ahora. Está ahora mismo en 51. Wow, so bajó hasta 48.
On a typical tweet that I put out, I'm getting in the neighborhood of 1,000 replies to that tweet. I'm reading every single one of those replies myself. Nobody's summarizing them for me. I'm reading them. And I learned so much about what you all think.
So ahora está hablando del fanbase que tiene en Twitter y de cómo siempre está conectado con la gente a través de Twitter, y que bueno, que para él es importante lo que nosotros pensamos, eso nos toma en consideración.
To know what the owners of my company think, and I'm learning a lot by reading my inbound flows on Twitter.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, I was interested by the comment. They're not always flattering, because to go through 1,000 messages, you've got to have some pretty thick skin to be able to, I could speak on this myself. You got to have some pretty thick skin to be able to go through everybody's opinions, because sometimes people don't agree with you, and that's, you know, it is what it is. We don't always have to agree. But I think that just shows the dedication and the fact that you really do care about what the apes think. And we can see it in the way that this has come out, or at least I can see it in the way that this has come out with the recent press releases and the way that you've handled the questions. I got to be honest, I had some speculation. I had some concerns coming into this interview, and I think the way you're addressing these is very solid. So we'll leave those opinions to the rest of the people. Go ahead.
Can I quickly respond to your comment about a thick skin?
Yeah.
Try running a professional sports team in Philadelphia. That's a city where they famously booed Santa Claus. You develop a thick skin pretty fast. But look, if somebody wants to disagree, I would prefer that they do it civilly instead of with a lot of profanity. But you know what? We're in the public eye. We're big boys and girls. We can take what's thrown at us. We should be able to take what's thrown at us.
Eso le está diciendo que la gente a veces tiene lenguaje fuerte en Twitter, pero
pick your percentage. 99%, 99.99% of what's on my Twitter feed. And I think you actually can read the replies to my tweets. I think that's
absolutely.
One thing. You can't read my DMs, which I also read, but I think you can read replies. They're so heartfelt. They're so well intended. Whether they agree with us or they disagree with us, and most of the time they've been agreeing with us of late. As I said, I learned from hearing what you guys think. And nobody's doing this for me. I write my tweets myself. I'm reading my inbounds myself. I'm learning a lot from it. I'll be a better executive for it.
Awesome. That's good stuff. That's a good way to wrap up that question. So, I suppose, you know...
básicamente lo que dijo es que se debe a la gente, a sus clientes y a los dueños de la empresa, que en este caso somos nosotros, y de ahí empezó a hablar cómo en Twitter él está activo y escuchándonos y prestando atención a lo que nosotros queremos decir. Mientras tanto, el stock va en 51 ahora mismo.
Do so. If you can, you want to say something, feel free to do so. Otherwise, we can move on to the next piece.
So, yeah, one of the various other things in my job that I have to do is I have to make sure that I strictly adhere to all securities laws. And it's really not appropriate for the CEO of a public company to ever talk about dividend policy going forward. And so I think the law requires that I not answer that question.
All right.
I would point out that we did pay a dividend for I think it was 7 years straight. And then we stopped paying a dividend a year or two back. And a dividend is a use of cash. And I'm glad that the cash we might have put out in dividends looking in the rearview mirror, that we had kept in the company treasury, because that's probably the difference between us having survived as a company and having gone down in the pandemic in 2020. And
Está tratando de explicar por qué paró los dividendos al principio de año.
A lot of companies pay a dividend, a lot of companies don't pay a dividend. There's a lot of evidence that companies are not hurt by not paying a dividend, making no comment about what we'll do in the future. I just know that we've now put a lot of cash in the treasury. That's our treasury, not the U.S. treasury. And what I would like to use that cash for is to grow the company, to seize on opportunities that come before us, to create value for shareholders, to make AMC a stronger company for the long haul. And at the end of the day, that's what our shareholders would want me to do.
All right, perfect. That's honestly more of a response than I was expecting, so I appreciate the clarifications, Adam. It does mean a lot. All right, so we've already kind of touched on the cash flow. That was one of the questions that I had, but in this next one, this is like a final message to the short sellers. So our first interview, we're kind of wrapping things up here. The first interview, you said something at the end that I think a lot of people remembered. You said it's not a good idea to bet against movie theaters. I definitely don't think it's a good idea to bet against AMC, and I'd like to think it's not a good idea to bet against ADAM Aron. And that rang true with a lot of people, and I think it came pretty well to fruition. So if you could revisit that question, right, a message to pass along to short sellers, what would you have to say to them right now as they continue to hold a pretty heavy short interest stake, according to what's reported to the exchange data, right, in the company? What would you say to them now at this point?
It's an interesting question. The right answer to your question is that my job is not to run the stock. My job is to run the company. My job is to create and build and increase value for you, the owners of my company, for the long haul. That's the right answer. And that's my answer. That's like, and my lawyers are probably going to wish that I stopped there. But I'm going to tell you something else. This is the 5th company that I've run since 1993. All the 4 that I ran before this were all successes. I think you have to look at AMC right now, having moved ourselves in a position from being the second biggest movie theater chain in the U.S. when I got here to the biggest in the world. That's got to be good. And the fact that we dodged the bullet of this pandemic, given how awful it was that was thrown against us, that's got to be pretty good. I'd like to think that AMC, when the history books are written, is going to be a very proud chapter in American business, and a very proud chapter by the executives who ran the company. It just really annoys me to no end that people bet against us. And I spend every waking moment trying to make AMC a stronger company.
Okay.
So the people who bet with us are the ones who succeed.
That's a beautiful way to wrap that up. Awesome. Well, Adam, we've taken up a pretty good chunk of your time. I appreciate you answering some hard questions because, as you already know, you read through Twitter, you read through Reddit, you pay attention to a lot of this stuff. There was a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and hopefully this helped answer some questions. I know that it helped clear up some of the opinions that I had about the recent things that have happened with AMC. Are there any last comments, concerns, questions that you have that you'd like to say before we end this live stream?
Yeah. In ADAM Aron, you get what you see. I'm really a straight shooter. I call it as I see it. I'm not a spring chicken. I've been at this a long time. I don't mean AMC, but like business career. My word has always been my bond. I've always been a high integrity guy.
Apenas termine, vamos a hacer un recap de lo que dijeron.
And just give us the benefit of the doubt once in a while. Everything we're doing is in the best interests of the company and growing the company over the long haul. And especially as you give us the benefit of the doubt and trust us to try to make the best decisions we can. We're human. We might make mistakes here and there, but our track record's been pretty good. I just want to end this interview not only by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to talk to your subscribers on YouTube, but to thank all of your subscribers. I hope you buy a lot of movie tickets. I hope you come to our theaters. I hope you enjoy your theaters, because this is your company. We just set up a program that's quite revolutionary yesterday called AMC Investor Connect, where we're going to start communicating with our shareholders directly and make special offers to our shareholders. Come to all you gotta do is, it's free. Just like give us your name and email address and click a little box that says you're a shareholder. Like, we're already giving you a free popcorn if you come to a movie this summer. There are going to be more offers coming. One of the things that I've been most impressed by over the last 6 months as this phenomenon has occurred is how passionate many of you are about AMC. Like, we give our hearts and souls for this company. Like, we bleed AMC red. And what I've learned over the last several months is you do too. And I hope you're shareholders of this company for years and years and years to come. I hope you're customers of our company for years and years to come. And I know that we're the biggest movie theater chain in the world. I believe that we're the best movie theater chain in the world. I hope that in what we do and how we conduct ourselves and how we continue to build our company and grow value for our shareholders, I hope we make all of you proud. And I'm personally very grateful to you for your support of AMC.
Well, I appreciate that, Adam, and the apes. I think what's really incredible about this is the culture behind why everybody has from what I've read, from my understanding, is it's all about the stories, the personal stories. And I think this big connection that's been drawn between AMC stock and what's drawn everybody together, the same sort of mentality is the why, right? So they all have their own stories they want heard. They want to feel like they matter. They want to feel like these short sellers who have bet against this stock and bet against the retail investor for years and years and decades was wrong this whole time. And AMC kind of stands for that same sort of thing. It's that freaking, like, I have a million memories, great memories. I had my first kiss. I remember saying that in the first interview at an AMC movie theater. And it's the same sort of mentality, right? It's all about the memories you make, the people that you grow connections with in both of these scenarios. And I think that's ultimately what gravitated so many people to AMC stock for the short term. And I think that is obviously going to transition to the long term. So thank you so much, Adam, again, for coming on to this live stream. It does mean a lot to me. Thank you to everybody who watched this. On the way out, drop a like if you'd like to. If not, I'm chilling. Appreciate your time. You have a great rest of your night.
Thank you, Trey. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Trey. Te pasaste, Trey. Thank you very much. Le voy a poner aquí, thank you. Ok, vamos entonces a digerir un poquito de lo que pasó acá en esta entrevista. Bueno. Tenemos cositas que decir. Ok, mientras tanto el stock bajando. Ok, bueno. Empecemos por los shares, que es lo que nos interesa. Los shares, fue bien tajante en decir de que ya vendieron todos los shares que tenían disponibles. Ahora solamente quedan 46.000 shares por el lado de ellos. Ya no hay más shares para que diluyan el stock. Déjenme ver si se escucha acá. ¿Aló? ¿Sí? ¿Se escucha? ¿Puede ser? ¿Sí? No. Ok. Entonces eso es algo positivo, porque básicamente una de las preocupaciones que teníamos era que siguieran diluyendo el stock. Es algo... ahora ya sabemos que no van a poder seguir diluyendo el stock porque no tienen más shares disponibles, solamente les quedan 46.000 shares, que no es nada. Todos los shares están en el mercado, ya no hay más posible dilución. No va a pasar de nuevo de que estamos tratando de subir el stock y de repente venden shares de nuevo y ponen esos shares en el mercado. Los shares que se pueden poner en el mercado serían si los hedge funds empiezan a hacer short de nuevo y agarran shares del brokerage y los ponen en el mercado. Pero por el lado de AMC ya no hay más. Si fueran a crearse más, va a ser cuando se haga la votación el próximo mes, donde van a estar todos los shareholders, tienen participación y pueden votar en qué es lo que queremos que haga la compañía, que cree más shares, que no cree más shares. La compañía tiene una deuda de 6 billones en concepto de landlord, lo que le deben a la gente por no haber pagado arriendos. Ahora, con estos 2 billones, esa deuda baja a 4 billones. Todavía tienen una deuda que tienen que pagar. Esa deuda puede ser que más adelante ellos pidan a los shareholders, que somos nosotros, si nosotros le damos permiso o si nosotros aprobamos el poder crear más shares. Pero eso va a pasar el próximo mes. Y es una votación donde nosotros podemos decidir. En cuanto al, bueno, él acaba de decir que él es bien activo en Twitter, toma mucho en consideración nuestra opinión como shareholders, pero también si lo piensan, nosotros somos sus clientes, porque nuestra generación es la que va al cine. Entonces, muchos de nosotros queremos que AMC siga adelante y ir al cine y disfrutar de las películas que nos gustaban y todo eso. Entonces, él dice que con el cash que puede producir, tiene ahora mucha mejor posición que muchas otras compañías del mismo rubro que ya han cerrado y se han ido a bancarrota. Entonces, ellos pueden incluso comprar las otras compañías o ciertos lugares de esas compañías. Entonces, él puede crecer mucho más la empresa como tal. Que también dijo de que se encarga de AMC como compañía, no como stock. Eso lo trató de dejar bien claro. Por lo mismo no se manifestó en cuanto a la dividends. Tú sabes que muchos stocks pagan dividendos. AMC paró los dividendos, ¿cierto? Y las aerolíneas también del año pasado. Pero él no se manifestó en cuanto a los dividendos, si van a volver o no. Como stock, la única importancia de toda esta entrevista fue saber de que ellos ya no tienen más shares disponibles. Literalmente solamente tienen 46.000 shares, eso es todo. Entonces ahora ya no puede haber más dilución. Si el stock sube, el stock sube. No hay más sorpresas. Lo único que nos queda ahora es pelear con los hedge funds. Esta entrevista pueden ver cómo ha afectado el mercado. El mercado estaba más optimista al parecer. Y después de esta entrevista el stock bajó a 49.90. 49.90. Estamos peleando en el área de los 50, 51, 49. Vamos a ver qué pasa mañana. Mañana es un día fuerte. ¿Por qué? Porque mañana, los viernes, la gente no le gusta quedarse en el mercado el fin de semana. Eso puede ser que el viernes la gente cierre posiciones y se vaya. Y eso va a ser presión de venta. Y además de eso, muchos de los contratos que se piden, tú sabes, de las opciones, vencen los jueves. Y entonces también, bien interesante, dice que ayer creo que dijo que ayer el 11% de todos los contratos que se estaban procesando eran de AMC. La cantidad de volumen que se está trabajando es increíble. Vamos a ver qué pasa con los fake shares, porque al menos él, no sé si es, yo creo que eso, lo que dijo fue más por un tema legal, porque él no puede manifestar de que piensa que haya fake shares, porque pueden demandarlo a lo mejor. Él no podía abiertamente decir eso, pero lo que sí dice que el flujo de opciones ha sido muy alto. Entonces, ¿qué pasa? Este viernes hay hartos contratos que se van a vencer. Si el stock baja, esos contratos puede ser que se venzan sin precio y entonces la gente pierde ese dinero en esos contratos. Pero si el stock llega a subir, esos contratos van a subir harto de precio y van a poner harta presión en el sistema para que también suba el stock. Vamos a ver qué pasa mañana. Todo va a depender del soporte que pueda hacer el stock y hasta dónde pueda reventar. Hoy día tuvo un segundo golpe tratando de llegar a 67, 68 y no alcanzó a llegar a 70 y empezó a bajar de nuevo. Ahora está en 49. Mucho cuidado, chiquillos. Vean en el fondo, como les decía, si hay más altos o si los altos van siendo más bajos, les va a dar una buena indicación de hacia dónde está yendo esto. Mucho cuidado, no pongan dinero que necesiten, pongan solamente dinero que estén dispuestos a ver cómo baja un 50% de un minuto al otro. Y bueno, esto no es el consejo financiero. Cualquier cosa, chiquillos, me avisan en los mensajes. Que tengan un buen día. Nos vemos. Chao, chao. No sé cómo cerrar esto.